Hey, good morning, y'all. This is Jeff again with a little bit of horseback wisdom. I just wanted to bring something to you today. There's a lot of discourse and talk about um, people getting away with stuff. And I wanted to talk about the subject of sin, something that's not very popular in church today, but something that we need to talk about because, like a sickness, if you were infected by something and I had the antidote and I didn't tell you about it, that would be my fault, right? In the criminal world, we call that an accomplice. But I wanted to read something to you out of Psalms 9 and 10. Psalm 9, 7 says that the Lord sits enthroned forever. He has established his throne for judgment, and he judges the world with righteousness. He judges the peoples with equity. And then in verse 18 it says, "For the needy shall not always be forgotten, and the hope of the poor shall not perish forever. Arise, O Lord, let not man prevail, but let the nations be judged before you. Put them in fear, O Lord, and let the nations know that they are only people." So it's no secret that quite a few people, myself included, believe that we are living in the very last part of history as we know it. All of us are eternal. All of us human beings are eternal. And we're going to spend that eternity in one of two places. And we see so much wickedness in the world today. I just read that some Disney employees were arrested for child trafficking, and that and we know that there was an island where these billionaires and wealthy people and politicians would go to abuse children. And we see people thinking they're getting away with sin. But none of us will get away with sin. And that should be a terrifying thought. I know it is to me, but there's an antidote for that. There's a wonderful grace that God, who created the universe, has given us. And that was the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. No one's going to get away with anything. In fact, just the opposite. The Bible says that every thought, the intents of our heart, every word that we've spoken, we're going to be accountable for. And if I didn't know that God loved me and that I was a child of his because of his son Jesus' sacrifice and my acceptance of that by faith, I would be completely terrified. And I'll just share with you, from my experiences in all kinds of crazy places around the world, some of which are considered the most dangerous there are, there's nothing nearly as frightening as the idea that God is going to hold us accountable. There's nothing a human being can frighten you with that even comes close to that. And if you'll be honest with yourself, I think back when I wasn't a believer, and I would make excuses for stuff like, oh my gosh, I don't have any money, or no one's going to miss this, or they were mean to me, or they were rude to me, or they deserve this, and use all kinds of things to justify my sinful behavior. And we all do that, right? But we should stop doing that, and we should accept Jesus and live a life according to him. And when we do that, we become other people focused. Instead of blaming others, we start to say, Lord, forgive me. Help me to be a better person, right? Help me to love my fellow man. Help me to serve the people in my community or people you put me in touch with. And that's one of the things that in the years that I did prison ministry, I used to recognize whether someone was really sincere. There's a kind of a saying that goes around that everybody in prison wants to be a preacher because, it gets them out of a lot of negative stuff. But prison is a place where there are real conversions. And one of the ways that I used to be able to tell that was if someone had stopped blaming others for being there, right? And they took responsibility for what they did. And they said, I've asked God to forgive me. I've asked the people that I hurt to forgive me. And I know I can't fix necessarily what I did, especially if it was a serious crime like murder or rape. But they would say, I've asked God to forgive me, and I've asked those people to forgive me. And imagine a world where if we all did that, right? Imagine a world where the kind of wickedness that we see, especially against women and children today, didn't exist. Well, that world's coming. But the purpose of this brief message is you don't want to be on the other side of that judgment that I read about in the book of Psalms. You don't want to be one of the people that God comes and says, okay, you didn't believe that I existed. I showed you millions of times. You rejected my teaching and my word and my son. And so you decided you wanted to follow the devil and live by your own wits. You wanted to worship yourself basically as God is what you're saying. And so God will say, okay, so now I'm going to act towards you like you wanted to be treated. And folks, I don't want that for anyone. Even people that have committed horrible crimes, the punishment that God has for sin is something that no one wants to deal with. Unfortunately, people will, because they're going to reject God's offer of clemency, basically. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you. Be outward focused. Love your neighbor. Point out sin in your own life and ask God to forgive you for it. And be blessed in Jesus. He loves you, and I love you. Have a blessed day.